Hey everyone, welcome to NextAdvisor's first live event, Latina Women on Fire. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Alex Gailey, a personal finance expert at NextAdvisor, and I'm so excited to kick off this event. Today we have a panel that consists of 4 Latina financial experts. They'll be talking about why they're pursuing FIRE, which stands for Financial Independence and Retire Early, and how they've overcome a lot of the challenging obstacles in their lives to achieve financial success. They'll also touch on how women and people of color can use FIRE to create multiple streams of income, build generational wealth, and heal systemic inequalities within their communities. I've been speaking to these women over the last few weeks and months, and they have trusted me with their stories on NextAdvisor. And as a Latina myself, I resonate a lot with what the women will be sharing today. Before we can dive into the fun stuff, I do have to go over a few housekeeping things. Puerto Rican entrepreneur and NextAdvisor Jannese Torres-Rodriguez will introduce the panelists and kick off the conversation as the moderator. She spends her time educating POC and Latinx communities on money through her Instagram platform, online workshops, and her podcast, Yo Quiero Dinero. She actually accomplished a really exciting milestone recently. She is in the process of transitioning from her 9-to-5 to embrace full-time entrepreneurship. And it's just so exciting to see it happen real time, right before our eyes. And these women are actually accomplishing these financial goals. If you have any questions, please drop them in the Q&A box. And if you have any comments, you can drop them in the chat box. Just please be kind and respectful throughout the conversation. We do have an hour long for this event, and we will reserve 15 minutes at the end for any questions. There will be polls throughout the conversation as well for you all to participate in. Also, don't forget to follow NextAdvisor on social media. Our handle is at NextAdvisor on Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. And now I will let Jannese take it away and get started with panel introductions. I hope you enjoy the event.
Alex, thank you so much for that amazing introduction. So flattered. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for being here. I don't know about you, but I'm like kind of trying to calm myself because I was literally like dancing across the room with the music. And so I think the vibe has been set for today. So let's get into this conversation. First off, let me introduce my amazing panelists. We'll start off with Delyanne Barros. She was actually born in Brazil. She is a 38-year-old employment attorney and money coach, and she teaches investors how to slay the stock market so that they can achieve financial independence sooner rather than later. She's actually on track to retire by 45 and move to Portugal. Woo! Next up, we have Vanessa Menchaca-Wachtmeister. She's got a list of talents as long as her name, and she is a travel tech professional and creator of the Wealth and Wanderlust platform, Wander Onwards. Vanessa is originally a Cali girl from LA. She's a proud Chicana, and she's been living abroad for the past 7 years. #goals. Today, she's going to be today she helps people achieve location and financial independence through her Move Abroad course and her financial literacy digital products.
Hello, everyone from Germany. It's 11:30 at night.
She loves us, y'all. That's why she's awake late. So make sure that you show her some love. Last but not least, we have Rita-Soledad Fernández Paulino, who we're just going to call Soledad. And she is a personal finance enthusiast based in LA who's teaching you how to be debt-free, start an emergency fund, and invest for retirement. She shares her personal finance journey on Instagram at Wealth para Todos because she wants all of us to build wealth juntos. Ladies, thank you so much for being here at NextAdvisor. Thank you so much for hosting this amazing conversation. Let's dive in because we have so much to cover. Okay, there's going to be a poll question that comes up. The first thing we want to know from you is, do you know your FIRE number? So the team at NextAdvisor is going to put that up, and we're going to get into what FIRE is. So Delyanne, why don't you start us off? You are the FIRE queen. You are the fairy godmother of financial independence for all of us. So talk to us about what it actually is.
Wow, the FIRE fairy godmother. I love that. I'm going to have to add that to all my hashtags. But yeah, so if you have not heard of FIRE, you're in the right place for it because all of these ladies, we are pursuing it like it's our business because it is. So FIRE stands for Financial Independence. Relax early. All right. Relax early. It's work optional. It's freedom. It's fabulous. Life living on your own terms. But what does that mean in terms of numbers, right? And I promise that this is like Not going to be a math class tonight, but we're going to throw a little math at you just so you can start planning and start wrapping your head around, okay, what is it that I need in the bank to actually make this a reality? So the FIRE number is a little formula that goes like this. You take your annual expenses and you multiply it by 25. You can either multiply by 25 or you can divide it by 0.04. You're going to come out with the same number. And the reason why I say that is because sometimes people get a little confused. They're like, well, 25, does that mean that it's only the amount of money that I need for 25 years? No, this formula comes from a study called the Trinity study. And it basically means that if you have this amount of money invested, you can live off of it for basically the rest of your life without ever having to work again. Basically, if you have this number in your investment accounts, everything added up total, you can now pay yourself a paycheck for the rest of your life. You can become work optional. You do not have to work anymore, right? So a quick little example, let's say that you want to live off $40,000 a year. You're going to take 40,000. You're going to multiply by 25. Boom, there's your $1 million. So let's say everybody's amount of how much you have to invest per month is going to differ depending on where you are on your journey. But let's say hypothetically, the number is $500. You're like, okay, for me to hit $1 million by this date, I need to invest $500 a month. But let's say that's out of reach for you right now. You're like, oh, I can't do $500. So I guess give up, right? Like, oh, I can't do FIRE. This thing is not for me. No, right? There's going to be many possibilities, hopefully, in your future to either reduce your costs, increase your income. Those are like the two options, but there's another option too. Let's say you can't reach your FIRE number for whatever reason, right? But what if you could generate $20,000 to $30,000 a year from your investments, right? And then that means that you only have to fill in a gap of like $10,000 to $15,000, $20,000. That is a lot less daunting, right? Than like, where am I going to get $40,000 a year to like quit my job? What about if you only need to generate $10,000, $20,000 a year? That's like a lot more achievable, right? So maybe you're doing FIRE light and that's okay too, because there's freedom in that. There is, you can breathe knowing that, wow, I can work part-time, or you can totally switch careers. You can maybe start a business. But so I just wanted to introduce that concept because I know a lot of people will hear that FIRE number, they'll run to the calculators and immediately get overwhelmed and think like, this isn't for me. And I want you guys to be super flexible with this idea.
I love it. Thank you so much for that intro. And like you mentioned, the first step is really figuring out your expenses. So the team at NextAdvisor is actually going to link an article that is on the NextAdvisor website that helps you figure out your budget, because that's the foundation of this, right? We got to know where money's going so that we know what to do with it. Okay, so let's talk about, so we're here, we're Latinas, right? We're here pursuing FIRE. This is not an avenue or space that is traditionally associated with women of color. And so that's why it's so important that we're talking about this. Now, I want to hear from each of you, kind of, why do you feel Latinas and women of color should be pursuing financial independence? And Vanessa, we'll start off with you.
So shout out to all my firstborn Latinas. Like, we are basically the matriarchs of the family. And for me, FIRE means that I get to live my own life and focus on what's important to me. So when I was living in Los Angeles, or even in just like America, I was constantly responsible for my family, for making decisions, for caretaking for my 3 other siblings, and to some degree being the second mother of my household. Whereas with FIRE, not only am I independent in my own right, because I'm actually chasing FIRE by myself. Like, my husband can come if he wants, but like I'll hold this down for the both of us. But I get to decide what I'm doing with my life finally, instead of worrying about other people's priorities, mistakes, and just general baggage that tends to come with being in a crazy Latino family. I think especially for women of color, it gives us our independence back. It means that we get to have a strategy, a plan, an exit to any sort of negativity that might be surrounding us. And especially in this environment, that's what is really important to me.
I love that so much. Soledad, how about you?
Well, for me, I didn't think about financial dependence retire early. I started thinking about retirement when I was around 32. So for me, it became like, okay, well, let me just see, why not us? Could somebody with my husband and I's background, could we actually do it? It seemed like a challenge for us. My husband grew up in the South Bronx. Shout out to everybody in the Bronx, in the projects. And so I grew up with, with a single mother. People with our backgrounds, both of us single moms, low income or, house poor, we just people don't retire, they work until they die. And so for us, it's just an opportunity to just can we do it? Can this be something different? And yeah, to represent.
Yeah, I love it. It's just, is there an opportunity to break that cycle of poverty, right? It's what are we going to do to level the playing field and get ourselves in a place where not only are we creating this legacy that is going to change our lives, but the future as well. So I love that perspective. What about you, Delyanne? What is it about FIRE that you feel like women of color should really, really understand in its power?
I mean, it's so powerful for me because it's like Vanessa, it's not just for me, it's branching out so beyond me at this point, right? I don't have kids, but I have an aging parent. And I know a lot of people are in the situation where we are going to be the safety net for our parents, right? Like they were doing the best that they could to put food on the table and make sure that we were not getting ourselves into trouble. So I think mission accomplished. Good job, mom and dad. I guess it's my turn to kind of pay back a little bit now, right? So I want to take care of my mom, and I see her working, now 7 days a week. My mom works 7 days a week. She works really hard, and I don't want that for her forever, and I don't want it for myself either. So for me, it's like I'm doing this for the family, and I dragged my sister along too, and now she's investing. So for me, this is a family affair. It's so much more than just a number in my bank account. It really is changing the entire dynamic of our history.
Oh, I think Jannese froze. I just wanted to top off while Jannese dials back in. Especially for our culture, like a lot of people pursuing FIRE are traditionally like white straight men, and they don't have to plan for family emergencies like we do. I don't know anyone on this panel that wouldn't jump in to save their siblings, to save their parents, to save their grandparents, extended family. My God, I for my wedding, 60 people RSVP'd from Mexico and 110 showed up. And fortunately, it was a Mexican-owned taqueria, so like they were fully prepared for this avalanche of Mexicans to come unannounced. And we had like a mountain of guac and like all this barbecue. It was such an amazing culture, but it is kind of like testimony to some of the struggles that we face as women of color, as people of color. Our financial setup is not the traditional like nuclear family where the children get to just worry about themselves. We have all these different generations that we're trying to budget and plan for. So we need to take that into consideration when we're doing our math. I don't know if you wanted to add to that, Soledad, because I know you have extended family members and you actually have a emergency fund for extended family members.
Yeah, something that I keep in mind and part of our budget is saving $1,000, not $1,000 a month, saving each month towards a family emergency fund, because I already know that something that was happening in our debt freedom journey was my mom needed money. My mother-in-law needed money. We had cousins, friends who needed money, and we wanted to be able to support them. And so instead of being bombarded with an unexpected expense, we started to just put it in our budget and save for it. And now, if somebody's car breaks down, whatever happens, we know, oh, ya tenemos el dinero to just pull it from that emergency fund. And I think, that's important. Like, we're building wealth, not just for ourselves. A lot of us are going to be the first people in our family to build wealth, right? So it's about that generational wealth that we may not have had access to growing up, but we're changing that.
No,
absolutely.
I agree.
Sorry, go ahead, Delyanne.
Yeah, no, that's the thing. There's a pride and a responsibility that come with being the first, right? So I'm the first to go to college, the first to, go to law school, the first to invest and even think about things like retirement. My mom's like, I don't know where you got the head for all of this. It certainly didn't come from me. And I'm like, don't worry, mom, you did what you needed to do. But there is a responsibility that comes with that to pay it forward and to pay it back. So I really take that responsibility seriously. And I think that's what we're all doing, not only within our families, but we're doing it on our platforms, right? We're like spreading it out even wider to the community. And that's how we're going to uplift our communities, by sharing this knowledge and sharing our experiences. Because if we're not putting ourselves out there, people are going to believe that this is a rare phenomena that is an exception to the rule, right?
Yeah.
And I don't want
Tell me, how did you learn about FIRE?
Who, me?
Yeah, both of you. I want to know.
I mean, I fell down the rabbit hole on Instagram when I found the debt-free community. I think that's usually how people kind of meander their way to this, topic. Is I had $150,000 of student loans and I'm like, I need to pay this off. So anybody else out there, struggling with this? And when I found the debt-free community, then I, found the FIRE community, and it literally blew my mind when I saw the compound interest calculator for the first time. It was like, it completely blew my mind. It's something that I just tweeted this, that I was like, once you see the compound interest effect, you can't unsee it. It's something you cannot unsee, and it changes you completely forever and ever. It's like taking the red pill on the Matrix. Like, I took the red pill, I fell down the rabbit hole, and it's a very supportive, amazing community. My God, people are just so supportive, and like they're cheering you on and they're celebrating your successes. And I'm like, yeah, who wouldn't want to be a part of this?
How about you, Vanessa?
Well, I found it because I was 110,000 in debt, and I was making 33,000 pounds a year at the time at 40% tax in the United Kingdom. So I was just looking at the numbers. I'm like, this does not add up. Like, there has to be a better way to pay down my debt. I started learning about snowball, avalanche, different ways of paying debt more efficiently. And then I took any job that people would pay me for, and that was legal. So I started working my butt off to pour in over $10,000 in 8 months into my high interest credit card debt. And then I started targeting my student loans debt with a blend between avalanche and snowball. But I started posting about FIRE online, or mostly I started posting about money and my debt journey. And I actually lost friends on Instagram because they're like, oh, you used to post like pretty pictures in pretty places, and now it's just too money-y. And for me, that was actually a blessing, because I'm like, oh, this person is not on the same wavelength. We have different values. That's fine. That means I get to move on with my life and go find other people that are on the same wavelength and trying to better themselves. But on this journey, Delyanne, you said that people are really supportive. Yes, but we also have lots of trolls in this industry that see women of color doing their damn thing and have the audacity to say something about it, to voice their unneeded opinions about things. So it's hard to be one of these women, because we're trying to learn something relatively complex while we have to defend ourselves and defend our positions in these industries and break all these generational curses. And I really want to touch on generational wealth with you, Soledad, because you actually inspired me when we were talking on our podcast about how you're teaching your children about money, how you created funds for your family. Could you go into how a family with children can structure their personal finances to pursue FIRE?
Yeah, so I think something that's important is, as a parent, and especially as a first like gen parent, a lot of us, like when we're the first ones to have access to más dinero, like dinero que puedes salir a comer, right? Like now you don't always have to eat at home, you can actually eat at a restaurant. When you get to that level of money, then you kind of start to think, oh, as a parent, that you should be buying like your child everything, todo lo que no tenías, everything that you never had. You have that kind of pressure or that desire. And for a while, I fell into that until I realized that, you know, what would be really, really cool is if I gave my children the opportunity to inherit a casa, to go to school without any student loan debt. And as that shifted and that became more of my goal, it was easier to go to Target and be like, oh, no, we're not buying that. No, we're not buying that. So that's been a big thing in terms of like being very clear about what our values are, the things that we really want, and what we want to prioritize for our family, and then just being focused on that. So like my kids are on board. They know like it's a no spend day. They know que cuando empiezan a trabajar, will match their Roth IRA contributions, because that's something that's really important to me. Like I would love for my kids not to even have to worry about their retirement because they're already contributing to their Roth IRAs as soon as they start working, which better be quick. So yeah, so those are the things, like I think as a family, it's about, you know, having that budget and making it sustainable, because anything that feels like deprivation is not going to be sustainable. And so, you know, something that impacted our savings rate, which is the amount of money that you don't spend each month, right, that you're actually putting towards investing, is the pandemic. I and my husband decided that we were gonna get a nanny, and our nanny cost us $2,800 a month, and that dramatically impacted how much we were able to put in a taxable brokerage account in terms of investing for early retirement. And we realized that we needed to do that because we weren't going to reach retirement. We were going to, like, there was no way we were going to die. That, like, we were just always fighting. It was not good. So I share all of that to say, like, you know, making adjustments, being flexible, understanding that there's different seasons in our lives, and just, you know, focused on the goal and yet also being flexible, I think is very important if you're a family pursuing FIRE.
And Delyanne, as the fairy godmother of FIRE for all of us, could you talk us through how to set ourselves up on FIRE? So if I have credit card debt, should I be putting every spare dollar into my Roth IRA, or should I be buying Tesla when I don't even have a budget? Walk us through this.
Yeah, and I think Rita, you know, Soledad touched on something so interesting, which was this idea of like frugality, uber frugality, that I think gets attached to FIRE sometimes, that like, oh, if you're pursuing that, then you can't have any fun, you can't spend any money anywhere, you shouldn't be going to restaurants, which is a total misconception around FIRE. So I just want to be super clear that all of us here are spending money on things that, you know, other gurus would say that we shouldn't be spending money on. Like, go get the
Peloton.
latte. Yeah, yes, Vanessa and I got a Peloton this year. You know, go get your latte. You know, I love to travel. When the borders start opening up again, I'm going to be all over the world. So it's just about doing it and prioritizing what's important to you. But as far as like, how do you set yourself up on FIRE? You know, do I believe in investing while you're in debt? 100%. Yes, I said it. I'm like one of, you know, those people out there who are like, what? You want us to invest while we're in debt? That goes so against what the traditional advice is. But the reason is because time is like so precious. It's so precious. And the more time that you're giving away to Sally Mae and to Navient and to everybody else and to Visa and to MasterCard, you're not paying yourself. You can't get that time back. Right? So yes, I do want you to pay your bills. Of course I do, right? I want everybody to crush their credit cards, but I want you to also pay yourself because nobody else is going to do it if you don't do it. Nobody else is going to prioritize you if you don't prioritize you. So, and one of the examples that I use is, you know, we're told to not invest when we're in debt. A lot of us here have student loan debts. I saw a lot of people mentioning, yes, I have student loan debt. I just paid mine off last year, but I invested while I paid off my student loans. And I'm so glad I did, because I built like a $300,000 portfolio while I paid off my student loans. And had I not done that, I'd be starting at zero right now. And there's no way that I'd be reaching my FIRE number by 45, right? So one thing is we tend to demonize student loans, but somehow it's okay to have like a massive mortgage. Oh, you can invest if you have like $1 million mortgage, but if you have a student loan, then no, the stock market's not for you. Why is there that distinction? It doesn't make any sense. I'll tell you why, because it's completely made up. It's completely fabricated to keep us, you know, small and away from the stock market and away from building wealth. So question things when you hear it. If it's not making sense to you, it probably is because there's something wrong with that message, right?
Hey, y'all. Zoom doesn't want to let me be great. Okay. That's what it is. They're trying to silence this conversation and it's not going to happen. Okay. We're going to talk about being wealthy. That's it. So catch me up. What were y'all talking about?
Basically, we were talking about breaking generational curses, building generational wealth. Soledad was paying like $3,000 for someone to watch her kids. I will watch your kids for that money. You put them on Zoom, I'll sing, I'll dance. What do you got? What do you need, girl? And
I love it.
Delyanne was just telling us how to set ourselves up on fire.
Okay, perfect. So I want to talk about kind of some of the unique challenges that us as Latinas face, right? Because it's very easy for like, you know, who created the fire movement, allegedly, right? Like white men. It's very easy for them to talk about building wealth. There's just not the whole systemic oppression thing going on for them too much, right? So let's talk about kind of what are some of the unique challenges that you think Latinas are facing in the pursuit of financial independence? Soledad, you want to start us off?
Sure. I think one of the big things is the fact that we're caretakers. We're taking care of ourselves and also our extended family. Something I had to learn was understanding the difference between being supportive and being there for my family and loved ones and being an enabler. And that's like a tricky thing because when we have people that we love, we know all the challenges that they have faced, that maybe an employer doesn't understand, that maybe a college professor doesn't understand. And so you want to support them. And yet at the same time, you know, like how much Netflix they watch. And when no están trabajando, cuando deben trabajar, you know? So it's like that little balance. And one thing that I'm like very cautious of is making sure that I'm teaching my family the skills so that they know how to also build an emergency fund so that I'm not always the emergency fund. And that's the thing, you know, and having those conversations, this is when people don't even feel comfortable talking dinero in your family in the first place, right? It gets tricky. And talking to parents about like, hey, what are your plans for retirement? You know, how much do you owe on the house? You know, and things like that, because they haven't had access to that information.
Yeah, that's such an important point, right? And you're right. There's such a cultural stigma with talking about money. So bringing it up is just a whole conversation in itself. And it's hard to see your parents as like maybe not the most responsible people once you find out that like, oh, so you guys weren't planning for anything other than living with me. That's the plan. Okay, cool. You know, but I think it just speaks to that is a real challenge, right? Like the financial literacy obviously wasn't passed on to us because it wasn't there to be passed on. For me, I think it's also like this cultural stigma around wealth, right? Like when we talk about being rich, being wealthy, having like the ability to be financially independent, there's a lot of judgment that comes along with that, right? There's a lot of like, ¿Quién te crees? Like, who are you? This is not like what we do. So that's something for me, like this concept of wealth guilt as I continue to kind of build my own portfolio and like really see that financial independence is something that I can realistically achieve. It brings up a lot because it's like, but why me? Like, why me and not somebody else? So I would love to know, Delyanne, like, have you dealt with that and kind of what's your advice to tackle those feelings? Because it can get really like existential.
I mean, I was just thinking religion now. I'm like, a lot of us, you know, grew up in religious families. So yeah, this idea of focusing on building wealth. My mom was always quick to be like, well, don't be such a capitalist. Like what, there's more to life than being capitalist. She would call, you know, she kind of almost be saying it in a digging way. But you know what? Now that I'm sending her monthly checks, all of a sudden she's very supportive. All of a sudden she's very, very happy with my capitalist nature. So it's just one of those things that like, they don't understand it in the beginning, but then they will quickly get over it when they start seeing that your wealth is blossoming, and especially if it starts benefiting them, right? So I'm like, Mom, I won't hold it against you. But yeah, growing up for sure, I think one way our parents were trying to humble us because they felt guilty that they couldn't provide what they wished they could provide to us, right? So in a way, they were kind of keeping us small so that to like kind of subdue their guilt. And so now we're having to like repair and heal these money wounds so that we can like really fully step into our greatness. And that takes work, you know, to really step into your greatness and accept the idea that like, I want to be rich and say that with like your chest. Like, you really have to work on that. But I work on that every day, honey. I look at that bank account and I'm like, yes.
I love it. I am so here for it. Vanessa, I think there's also like obviously the societal aspects of things, you know, the racial wealth gap and the gender wage gap. And obviously, like when you're making less money, it's harder to build wealth. So what is your experience in that? Because I know, you know, obviously you have the unique lens of having been an American and now you're an American abroad and you're just like, oh, wow, y'all are really like ghetto over there in America. So tell me kind of like your perspective from that lens.
I would never say that America is ghetto. What? So leaving America in 2013 really helped me see through the matrix. I left with like 2 suitcases and a dream. I dumped my boyfriend. I bailed on law school and I just showed up in Beijing, China. I'd never been there before. I didn't speak the language. I had no friends. But I really gave myself the opportunity to see what I was made of and what I could do with no network, no benefits, no like privilege. And that actually transformed me into like the real go-getter woman that I am today. So I mentioned earlier, I was only making 33,000 pounds a year, taxed at 40% when I first started paying off my debt. So that's not a lot of money to hit my debt with. And still, I was able to turn it out. And the real game changer was seeing through that cultural guilt, that female sort of feeling that I'm not worthy of money, and going hard with my negotiations. So in 2 years, I raised my salary by 100%. I doubled my salary. And that was from negotiations. That was from using tactics that I Googled and found on YouTube. And I kind of just portrayed it in my head. How would a straight white male who owns the world take this challenge on? And I started asking for the salaries that I wanted. I started negotiating for the contracts that I wanted. And that made a huge difference. But that was only possible because I relied on my network of incredible women and the straight white males. Like I had them teach me what they were saying. And I was like, well, we do the same thing. So why can't I do this as well? And I hope that you guys are looking at us. We're very different women. We come from different spaces, but if you look like us, if you come from where we come from, you can be up here too. You can totally be doing what we're doing. It doesn't matter where you started because we all started at different places and ended up in different places as well.
Absolutely. I love that message. Just own it, ladies. Like we can do it all. Anybody who says otherwise is just threatened by the prospect of you being successful. So just put them to the side and keep it moving. Okay, so let's talk about this topic of geo arbitrage or location independence, which is super popular in the financial independence space, right? Delyanne, you're planning on moving to Portugal. Vanessa, you're in Germany. So that you actually moved from New York to LA to kind of rejigger your budget, right? And I left New Jersey to move to Florida. So we've all kind of done things that have allowed us to lower our cost of living, right? The cost of living in depending on where you are can have a really big impact on you being able to pursue financial independence. So first off, what is geo arbitrage? Delyanne, you want to kind of talk us through kind of what the concept is?
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like a little bit of a life hack, right? So you're moving to a place that is going to considerably lower your living expenses so that you can, either attack debt or invest more money or just like improve. It's Geo Arbitrage so that you can improve your life, you know, either today or in the long run. So I actually did a little mini Geo Arbitrage as well. I moved from New York City to San Diego, and San Diego is not the cheapest place on the planet, but it is, anything is less expensive than New York City. I think only San Francisco is more expensive. So, you know, moving here cut my expenses considerably. And is part of what allowed me to accelerate my debt payoff and my investing, right? And wherever I go, I make sure to you know, have a budget in mind, and I don't inflate my lifestyle. Even though a place like here, I could get a much bigger place, I could spend more money and get more for my buck. I'm not going to inflate my lifestyle just because I can, right? That's the trick, is like, don't inflate your lifestyle just because you can. So that's, you know, I'm a huge fan of it for sure.
Soledad, so you are actually pursuing financial independence as a family with a single income right now, which is wild. I don't like the math for me. I can't even do that level of math. Can you talk a little bit about this? Because I think it's one of those misconceptions, right? That like you have to be a sink, right? A single person, no income, super high earner, and that's the only way you're going to achieve financial independence. But that's not actually true.
What Delyanne said in terms of living below your means is key. We started our like get our money right journey when I was on disability. So I was sick. My husband had his own company, was making $60,000 a year. And I went on medical leave. And so I was only getting disability checks. And that's when I started to budget. That's when I started focusing on getting out of debt, building an emergency fund. And once I realized like, oh, cool, we're debt free. Oh, we have an emergency fund. I thought like we had made it, because that's more than a lot of my loved ones could say. But then I was like, okay, if we're really going to build wealth, we need dinero to be investing. And so we just started to find ways. Like I did a great job of keeping our expenses low in terms of like living below our means. That's why I'm a zero-based budgeter. But my husband did a great job of increasing his income. But our budget remained the same until the pandemic, when we finally decided to get a nanny. But that's our thing. Like we know we have a budget that's sustainable for us. Like I said earlier, if it feels like deprivation, it's not going to be sustainable. Once you know, like, what is enough for you? You know, a lot of times we're told messages about what enough should be. That then, you know, necesitamos una casa grande, that we need a latest new car, that we should be traveling cada, you know, like every once in a while. Maybe if that's what you really want. And I think a lot of times we come here with these ideas of the American dream. No, it's about your dream and living what's aligned with your values. And for us, it's like, you know, we realize we don't need that much. We just need each other. And then just increase the dinero so that we can invest as much as possible.
I love it. That is a solid plan. Okay, Vanessa, so you are pursuing financial independence ex-US. Can you talk a little bit about what that looks like for you?
Yeah, so we just had a question right now. Can you pursue FIRE if you're not making six figures? I am someone who was not making six figures and was doing just that. So have no fear, it's totally possible. I also didn't own a house because £500,000 will only buy you like a 40 square meter apartment in London, which is, I want to say, just under 500 square feet. Yeah. So I don't know if you have 500,000 pounds laying around, but that just didn't seem like a good financial decision for us. Some things that are unique to living outside of America and pursuing FIRE is I don't have to budget for these medical emergencies that Americans are really focused on. So we don't have an HSA out here because we don't need one. Every month, the German government takes $300 out of my paycheck, or 300 euros. And that goes to my insurer. So everyone by law has to be insured in Germany. That money covers doctor's appointments, emergency services, operations, you name it. We don't have these like situations where people run out of insurance when they have cancer or life-threatening diseases. So I don't need an emergency fund for that. Also, our pension system here is different. Instead of paying into a fund like we would do in America, we have a point system here. So every single year, I accumulate a certain amount of points. And when I retire at 67, I am guaranteed a certain amount of money every single month until I die. Until I die. So currently, if I hit my fire number and I retire at 48, and like just drop everything, stop working, put on a thong bikini, go live in Bali, the government owes me 1,500 euros, and it'll probably be more to adjust it for inflation. But I get that until I die because I have been putting into the system for X amount of years. With my husband's income as well, we then have a nice little nest egg that is guaranteed by the government. And we both have our separate brokerages. So we get to level up that money even more by withdrawing 4% at a time. The housing market outside of the United States is also a little bit less crazy when you're not living in London or Hong Kong. So my rent here, I pay 800 euros and I live in a 100 square meter flat. What is that in feet? I don't know. You can Google it. But it's a 2-bedroom. I'm very comfortable. I have my Peloton. I go internationally like every single month because flights here in Europe are so cheap. It is genuinely the best place for someone with my values and my income goals, because I don't need to be so reactive to healthcare, retirement. There's a much lower cost of living out here, and that just brings me a lot more peace.
Yeah, such a good point. And this is why a lot of people in the financial independence space think about leaving the United States, because health insurance is a real problem here. And everywhere else in the world seems to have figured it out. So instead of trying to like reinvent the wheel, sometimes it's just easier to go find a place where maybe the weather is warmer, the cost of living is less, and you don't got to worry about insurance, right? So before we get into our Q&A, I would just love to ask all of y'all, for someone who's really just this lit the fire for them, pun intended, where is the best place to start when it comes to, and Soledad, we'll start with you, kind of lowering your cost of living or budgeting? Like, what are your favorite resources or apps or advice that you have?
So definitely looking at all of your expenses, looking maybe at your credit card statements, your debit card, going through and seeing like which of these things are necessary in terms of my quality of life. And really think, what are the things that are not necessary, that are just extra? There are things that I cut out. For a long time, I was getting like manicures and pedicures. When I realized what I like most is the massage. I don't need to spend so much time like doing that and reflecting on that. So I can cut those things out. And also realizing the things that are very important to us. And everyone's going to be different. It has to reflect your own values. And once you see that, once you see the things that are important to you, then building a budget around that and finding out like what is the amount that you can save each month that's going to feel sustainable, and figuring out, all right, am I going to focus on maxing out an employer retirement account? Am I going to do this with a Roth IRA? Once you know your FIRE number, then you can start to work backwards in terms of making sure you're investing the right amount, and also just being very like flexible because things come up. And decrease your expenses, increase your income, get paid to do the things that you love doing. Those are just some quick tips coming off the top of my head.
You took the best ones, girl.
Yes. All right. So for you, Delyanne, I know you get a ton of questions about investing while in debt. And the reality of it is that most of us, when we're starting out this FIRE journey, we are in debt. So what's your best advice for kind of managing those two priorities?
Yeah, we touched this a little bit on this when you were offline, but you know, like I said, huge fan of investing while in debt. As far as, you know, the credit card situation, I know that's always like the big question, like, oh, should I be doing it? I do think that there is a space for paying off credit card and investing if you have a very specific plan that you think you can realistically stick to pay off your credit card, right? If you're telling me, hey, I can crush this credit card in the next year, next 6 months to a year, absolutely. If we're talking about, hey, it's going to take 3 to 5 years to pay it off, that's a little bit of a different situation. You know, everything we're saying here tonight are guidelines. Obviously, personal finance is personal, but I want to give you the permission to think about these things like, wow, I can invest while in debt. Sometimes we need permission, and sometimes it comes from a stranger on a webinar. So I just want you to like think about that, because that's something that I thought wasn't, available to me, and it is. Like I said, I paid off my student loans while investing. I'm so glad that I did. And one thing that I want to touch on real quick is, listen, the economy is about to open up back up. We all want to see our friends. We're going to go crazy. We're going to want to spend money. We're going to go to the bars. We're going to go to the clubs. I really want you to like assess like what we've been through. Obviously in the past year, a lot of us have saved more money than we ever thought possible because of what's going on. And I want you to think like, wow, I found out who my real friends are. I found out that I didn't need to be spending this kind of money to keep my friend group, to impress the people that I thought I needed to impress. And hopefully that has kind of, brought some clarity around your spending. If you felt that you were being pressured into spending money that you did not have, or you did not want to spend.
Love it. Excellent advice. And Vanessa, last but not least, what are some of your favorite FIRE resources that you want folks to know about?
Well, obviously, all of our Instagrams at Wander Onwards, but also So Money by Farnoosh. She's actually a NextAdvisor presenter, a journalist, and she has a fantastic YouTube channel, fantastic podcast. I also really enjoy Rich and Regular because they're just like normal people with normal jobs leading the way in the FIRE community. I would also recommend Our Rich Journey because they have kids. And I know that this is a big question for families. Not everybody can be a single income or double income household, no kids. So I really value resources that are relatable, that you can see yourself in. And then for investing for financial independence and just in general, I really enjoy Investing with Rose on YouTube. She's a former finance individual. She's certified in all the best things. And I find that her information is really accessible and non-judgmental. So if you're an absolute beginner, Investing with Rose.
Awesome. Okay, let's hop right into the questions. So the first question we have is, how do you get your income up? I'm having a hard time. I end up worrying about insurance when you make $35,000. It is not enough to make it work. Yeah, so I'll tackle the how do you get your income up, because obviously, like, if y'all know me, I talk a little bit about side hustles, but I think first of all, everybody needs a side hustle. So like if this is something that was not drilled into you in 2020, it's a must, y'all. Like we have seen even these super quote unquote stable careers that we thought would never go away are just not, it's not realistic anymore, right? And this idea of like being able to retire, working at the same place for 50 years, it's not going to happen. So in order to start your side hustle, I have kind of a 4-step process that I think about when I'm thinking about, what do I want to do on the side of my 9 to 5? The first thing is like, think about like, what are you good at? What do people always ask you about? What are you kind of known for in your circle? What talents do you have that you actually enjoy like sharing with people? That's the first step, right? Because you definitely don't want to like start a second job that feels maybe like your first job that you don't even like it, right? Why would you do that to yourself? Then the second thing is like, start validating that idea. Talk to your circle of friends. Is this something that they would pay for? Think about how you would package those services, and then, ask a couple of friends to be your first clients, because those first clients are going to be the testimonials that you then use to validate your business idea. Then think about like a marketing strategy. Are you going to end up on social? Are you going to start a YouTube channel? Are you going to do a podcast, a blog, whatever? How are you going to get the message out there about your services? And then just start charging your worth, y'all, because too many of us are working for free and doing like really valid and valuable work in people's lives, helping them with, things like money coaching or like life coaching or, anything. Like just charge for your services. The same way that you would walk into a job and you would expect them to pay you for your work, you have to treat your side hustle the same way. It's okay to do it for free in the beginning just so that you can validate your idea, but at some point you got to start charging. So if you definitely need some like additional support, just come holler at me. This is kind of what I do. So, all right, let's see. Our next question is, wow, you guys are like blowing up this chat. I'm so here for it. Scroll. 38 new messages. Okay, hold on. Okay, so for Soledad, how do we have these conversations about money and investing with teenagers? I practice what I preach, but I don't know how to speak about it to them. I'm the tia that's trying to break the cycle. Love that.
First of all, thank you for being that tia that breaks the cycle. So important. So I have godchildren who are teenagers now, and también I have like my primas. And what I just do is I share with them like from my own personal experience. So as teenagers, they now have earned income, therefore they can open up a Roth IRA. You can tell, we show them a calculator online, show them like, this is what happens if you put this money in your Roth IRA and it returns about 8%. And it just blows their minds. My godson was just like, really? And I first started telling him about it when he was 12. So he's already like starting to think about the ways that he could make money. And I tell him also, like, maybe you're a W-2 employee, maybe you're not. If you're a side hustler, that's fine. There's even other opportunities for you to open up your Roth IRA, but report your cash income, pay the taxes, and then you can also invest it. So I think that's another like key message I want everyone to know. I think it's like everyone's like, oh, we don't talk about it so you don't pay your taxes. But when we don't pay our taxes, that impacts our ability to invest in certain types of accounts.
Super, super excellent advice. Okay, this one's for you, Delyanne. Where should we be looking as far as companies or services to start investing or opening up these investing accounts?
Not Robinhood. Please, everyone, not Robinhood. If you have a Robinhood account, I don't want you to like panic. Don't panic. It's a problematic platform. All you have to do is Google why. People are like, why? And I'm like, just literally just Google. The reason why, it's because that's not where you should start. Maybe that's what supplements your investments, but it's not where you should start. You should look for discount brokers like Vanguard, Fidelity, Schwab. Go to one of those places that are established. This is not that. What I tell people is choosing a place to invest based on how cute and pretty the app is like buying wine because you like the label. It may be garbage in the inside, So, as innovative as Robinhood has been, it's still a startup. It's a new kid on the block, and they're still working through a lot of their growing pains. Do you want to be putting your hard-earned money in a company that's still working through their growing pains? Not me. I'm going to go somewhere where it's established, where I'm going to get good customer service, where I know my money is going to be taken care of. And Vanguard is very customer centric. And I like that about them, right? And this is not a plug for them. I wish I was sponsored. I'm not. But any of those discount brokers are great places to start.
Excellent. Okay, this one's for you, Vanessa. What has been your experience with regards to racism for Latinas in Germany or Europe?
So everybody looks at me and they're like, oh, you're obviously from Turkey. It is a little strange because when you look like the way that we do, we're so diverse. Like we have Afro Latinas, we have European centric, we have indigenous Latinas. It's really hard to put us in a space, but overwhelmingly, there's more interest than racism or any sort of bias. So everywhere I go, people try to speak Spanish to me, and they'll be like from Romania, and they'll be like, do you speak Spanish? Can you practice with me? My Turkish vendor that I go buy my fruits and vegetables with only speaks to me in Spanish. I'm like, no, I'm trying to speak to you in German so I can practice my German. And so it is such a weird sort of dynamic out here. But the really strange thing is, if you have an American passport or an American accent, you will actually surpass a lot of the racism that we experience in America. People will see you as American first, as an immigrant from a rich country, and they will overwhelmingly be more excited about you coming to this country, this space. The white privilege that we never got, we have abroad, which is super, super weird to me. Even if you are Afro-Latina or like darker in your complexion, there is this overwhelmingly obvious openness because we are Americans, because we come from a wealthy part of the world. So it is a little bit difficult to navigate because I kind of have this guilt that I'm no longer suffering when so many people are suffering in America. I know I was suffering in America. I had lots of terrible experiences there. And all of a sudden I'm out here and like, nothing bad happens to me. Should I be suffering? It's a weird dynamic, but by releasing that guilt, by releasing that anxiety that I would feel, that's how I'm able to be so creative. Like I still work a 9 to 5 and I'm running Wander Onwards. I'm doing these webinars at 12:30 at night. And it's because I don't have to really worry about that anymore.
Amazing. Okay, last question. And I think we can kind of have a little bit of input from everybody on this one. So how do you address those who dismiss FIRE as something that you can only do if you're A, married, or B, a high income earner?
I'll go first. So for my loved ones and my family, no one was even planning for retirement. Everyone was relying on Social Security. And so one of the things I was just like, okay, I just want people to plan for retirement. Forget at what age, but just think about that, because Social Security, and I have a highlight on my Instagram, if you look up how much you can expect from that, and that's also like, if it's gonna be there, it's very little. And that's something that I think a lot of us need to think about. The Social Security is not going to be enough. So how am I going to invest in an employer retirement plan if that's available to me? What accounts am I going to open up? If at least I want everyone to leave here thinking about a plan for retirement. And the girls can tell you about like maybe FIRE, but por lo menos, please, everyone be like, you know what? I need to create a plan for my retirement.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I'll say, first of all, I'm a single Pringle. I ain't married. I'm doing this on my own. And even when I was, I've been a high income earner for the past 5, 6 years, but I did not have any direction. I did not understand what I was doing with my money. The money was coming in and it was flowing out. All right. And also I was hoarding money in my savings account. So there is such a thing as being a high income earner and then still not understanding what the hell to do with your money. And I was, a perfect example of something like that. But like I said earlier in the presentation, this isn't just about achieving financial independence, retire early. Like if that, for whatever reason, you think is not a possibility for you, that doesn't mean that you still can't take some of the burden off of yourself. Like, first of all, how nice would it be that your traditional retirement years are taken care of? Wouldn't that give you so much peace of mind? Wow. Like knowing that 65 plus, I'm good. Right. And maybe you don't get to fully retire early, but maybe you get to switch to part-time. Maybe you get to move abroad and like have a little side hustle in the Portuguese Riviera, it's about opening your mind up to different possibilities and not being so married to like these definitions, because you guys, we're literally changing the face of FIRE as we are ourselves pursuing it, right? So even the traditional definition is like gonna be different in 5, 10, 15 years because we're literally rewriting the book on this stuff.
Yes, I love that. Vanessa, any thoughts?
Yes. If you are a low income earner, which I have historically been, my first job out of college, I made $18,000 US a year, which was easier in China. You need to figure out how you can make more money in ways that serve you, your values, and your interests. So I opened my Etsy store last year, and already my digital printouts and products have made me $2,000. So I don't know if you need $2,000, but you can make it on Etsy by selling like digital products, digital tools. I have no maintenance on any of them. And it's my goal by the end of this year to have consistently $500 in profit from Etsy every single month. So I can rely on that in case of an emergency, or like if I need to take a break from work or something. The point is, FIRE doesn't have to be dumping in thousands of dollars every month. It doesn't have to be chasing the corporate ladder. It could be figuring out a certain amount of money that you're comfortable with, that you can live on, And that being your backup plan in case of anything, God forbid, happens with your family, at your workplace, it means you're no longer a prisoner. It means that you get to make your own decisions for your family, for yourself, for your mental health. And I think this year, more than any other time in history that we can remember, that's been so obvious. We need options, and money gives it to us.
Absolutely. This conversation has been so inspiring, so insightful. And a couple of things I want y'all to know. Next week, Delyanne is actually going to be with Farnoosh Sharabi, contributing editor to NextAdvisor. They're going to be doing an Instagram Live. You can find out so much more about us on our individual Instagram and social media platforms. And don't forget to follow NextAdvisor, because I'm pretty sure this is not going to be the first and last event for them. I think, if anything, what we want you to take away from this conversation is that, yes, this is possible. Yes, if you are currently in debt, you can start looking at it differently. You can start looking at it as not something that's a burden, but something that is a challenge for you to now get out of the way so that you can set up your future self for success, right? We all started in different places in life. We all started with no financial literacy. And it's because of communities like the ones that we've created and the ones that we reference as resources that we have been able to start to empower ourselves with the information that we needed to start doing something different. So if you're here, this is your moment. You're already starting to do something different by being exposed to this information. And we hope that, you will join us on this journey, because it's not enough for us to accomplish this on our own. It's about us as a collective community, like taking charge and saying, no más, the struggle's over. We're doing the damn thing. Okay, so to the folks at NextAdvisor, thank you so much for hosting this conversation. And till next time, y'all, stay poderosa.